I want to start actually because I was really interested in what you said, Paul, about the fact that it's not for you, when we talk about connectivity, about connected vehicles, it's about connected users.
How do I turn this on?
It's on. The gentleman over there does it for you.
It's really easy to think in terms of vehicles and to think in terms of cars and freight and lorries, etc. But when I look at our stats, 87% of our trips don't involve a car or a lorry. I've got to go with the majority, and that's where my thinking comes from. It's basically serving the majority of our borough's users. It's as simple as that. Now, I think the technology is the same. We just need to apply it in different ways.
Okay, we'll come back to what sort of ways we can do that in a moment. But I'm then going to go completely the other end of the scale to Carl, because I've been to the East Riding of Yorkshire. Beverley is a really beautiful place. Loved it. Loved all going to Hornsea, places like that. When I went there, I don't remember a fantastic tube network. I don't remember buses every couple of minutes and everything within walking distance. So the challenges that you're facing are worlds away from the challenges that Paul's facing.
Yeah, absolutely. I was shocked actually when I saw your slide about the number of people that don't own a vehicle. I think we can reverse that in the East Riding. I think most people own one or two. so yeah, our network is incredibly busy. It's rural, and you're right that the public transport networks are pretty poor. So yeah, we have the challenge of significant mileage on our highway every day.
And we'll go halfway, well, possibly not halfway between. If you went on a scale of Hackney at one end and East Riding at the other, somewhere in the middle will be Blackpool, Ian. You have those lovely trams running along by the sea, and you know there's 2 railway stations, plenty of public transport there for the borough. Where does connectivity fit in for you?
For me, it's that holistic piece around informed travel. So travellers, we're trying to deal with the travelling public, and as you say, car ownership is prolific. At the point you just made around car ownership, you know, not so many years ago there was 1 car in a household, and today it's 2, 3, possibly 4 if the kids are old enough to drive. The roads aren't getting any bigger, and neither is the space outside the street. So I see connectivity in helping us manage that traffic data, and that those traffic flows and those journeys. So having connected traffic signal control, connected data in vehicles, we get huge influxes of cars, vehicles, and visitors. And I say connected, I mean there's pedestrians and people as well, as Paul's mentioned. It's a key issue. We get lots of those. I just see us being able to better manage the network with better data. The point you made earlier about historical data, and it's great to look back at data, but you've got to use connected vehicle data to predict and look forward. So look at trends, look at need. Just how many times have you travelled a route that sometimes takes you 10 minutes, but other times takes you 45 minutes? If we can smooth out those troughs and peaks and make the network more efficient, then everybody benefits.
So Darren, you've talked about the Connected Vehicle Services Framework, and from the holistic view that the Department for Transport has, how on earth do you provide any sort of guidance when you have such completely different requirements from different parts of the country?
Do you have completely different requirements? Isn't it about people wanting to make journeys, whether that's for education or school, or to go shopping, or to get employment, or to access healthcare? People want to make journeys, and actually what we should be doing is ensuring that we provide people the right information to make that journey in the way that's the most effective for them, but also best in terms of using transport sensibly and using energy sensibly. So a journey across Hackney may well be best achieved by walking or using a bus. A journey from Beverley to Hornsea probably will involve a car. to be honest. They're fundamentally the same things. And actually what connected data really should be about doing is informing people, before they make the journey and while they're considering journeys, what's the best way to travel? What information do they need? How do we make journeys predictable? How do we help them understand whether somewhere is walkable or cyclable? When the bus will come? Where it will feel safer to walk? Where it will feel less safe to walk? Whether the journey's hilly or not? There's a whole range of things we could be doing, and surely connected services is partly about giving people information to use the right mode of transport for each journey they make.
Yeah, I'd agree entirely. So that joined up view between how you travel, whether you're going to get a bus, a train, or if the car park's full, if the roads are congested. I think the point you made earlier about the Googlers of this world and the sat-navs, that, it'd be great if you travelled from out of my borough into it, and then the systems I had in Blackpool updated that, so it didn't blind you, tell you to follow the main road into the car park. One, because the roads are congested. Two, the car park's full. So that connected data, that's coming back to the customer, so they're better informed to make better choices, which will mean the journeys will be more appropriate and less driving somewhere and then driving round and round trying to find a car park. It's that backwards and forwards data that I see the real benefit.
I mean, we're talking about, I suppose, two different use cases here, aren't we? One would be how a local authority uses a richer amount of data that you can get from connected vehicles. So that's the data coming in to give you more knowledge of what's going on the network. And then there's how the public use that data, because I was driving here yesterday. I drove along the A14, and about 8 o'clock in the morning, a lorry had hit a bridge. There'd been a big crash. The road was completely shut. Around about 10 in the morning, a massive great queue of people who were still joining the back of the queue. Now, if they'd been using their connected sat-navs, whether it was Apple Maps, Google Maps, TomTom, or any of the other providers, then real-time data would have told them not to go anywhere near there and to have gone a different route. So clearly people aren't using it. So we've got two challenges. One, the authority getting hold of the data. And then secondly, the old, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. How are we going to get that message across to to drivers and pedestrians and cyclists and public transport users to actually use the data that's available to make the best journey?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because that happened to me on our journey here, and we never actually spoke about it in the car. But I set the sat nav, pressed the button, put the postcode in, and set off driving. Then all of a sudden I realised I wouldn't have gone this way. I'd not looked at the route that it had chosen for me. Now I looked back at why it had chosen that route, and there was an incident on the M18. But I'm guilty of not pre-planning my journey. So I think what you're saying is really interesting, because once upon a time, I might have stuck the radio on half an hour before my journey and had a quick listen to the travel news, or, spoken to a colleague who I knew was driving that way. But I didn't. I just pressed go and I followed the instructions. And maybe I wouldn't have gone that way. Maybe I would have looked for an alternative route. As I say, guilty of using the tech instead of using some of this. So interesting.
But actually it worked out best for you because you didn't drive into the traffic jam. So let's just go down. What level of connected vehicle data do each of you have at the moment? And what would you be looking for? What more would, if I could come along and say, right, here is a data source, what would you want? We might as well go down and start with you, Carl.
That's the question, isn't it? And not what do I want, but what can I deal with? Because too much information can be unhelpful as well. I don't know yet what I want, what I need. That's why journeys like this that we're on today is helpful. I do know that the data's out there, it's interesting, it's exciting, and we need to bundle it up in such a way that we can understand it. That's the position that I'm at the moment. But what do I want? Some of the experts in the room are our experts that are on the stands out there can probably help us with that.
There is a please come and talk to the East Riding of Yorkshire there then. Paul.
The first thing I want is what you outlined in terms of safety. That's really important for any borough in London and anywhere, really. We've all got safety objectives, Vision Zero, etc., which we've got to meet. So the first thing I want is safety intelligence. I think that's really useful. The second thing we want is to be able to connect people's smartphones from here, in our pockets, straight into real-time information. And I think that's the start for us. We've not really gone a long way, but we can see the potential. And so connect all the users up. I know there might be issues about public use of data, etc., and there might be hurdles to overcome, but let's get them smartphones working.
Thanks. For me, it's easy. I'd love a lot more connected vehicle data, a lot more harvested, collected vehicle data that's not aggregated, that's actual key data. I want to know where all the traffic is. So I've got an existing system. It's just about to come online. That's a nice, clever traffic signal system. So I've got all my traffic signal data. I've got all my blip track data from my ITS signs. I've got journey time data on key corridors. But I'd really like to know what's happening on the way to that corridor. So the delays on the wider network and linking with national highways and the motorway. So the system's better informed. You talked about people blindly following the sat nav, even though it goes red. And they just go, oh, I wonder if it is blocked. Oh, it is. I'm sat in a traffic jam. So that happens a lot. If we can influence driver behaviour by trying to influence them in a wider perspective on the way into the network rather than getting right into it, so you divert traffic, take them onto other routes so that it keeps moving, reduces the congestion, that's what I'd really like. Well, that's what I intend to do when we get some... get that data. That's absolutely golden. I know it's harvested and I know it's out there, and you can get it now. But at the minute now, it's you have to buy it, and it's quite expensive. We are using connected car data for safety issues. We've got crash collision data and ABS data, but that's a slightly different metric. I just like the travel data, which you can get from, as we've all said, a car, a phone, or anything. It's that movement data.
Now,
I think
Paul mentioned... Oh, sorry, Darren.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I'm not going to answer that question because I'm not a local authority, but I think it's a slightly unfair question because I think you are kind of asking people, what do you want, when actually we don't know what the future will hold. It's slightly... And again, I think it goes back to the, Victorians would have asked for faster steam engines. We kind of know how we'd want to iterate from where we are now to somewhere else, which would help us do things better. But... working in a local authority with all the millions of other things you've got to do, you don't really have the time or probably the resource to kind of really do the future casting, to understand what the future will provide in terms of opportunity. That's government's job. That's why we employ people like the chief scientist. That's why we employ some of the people that you've heard today, is to do that future casting. And I think partly the way of answering that question is it's important that you express not the technologies and data that you want, but the things you want to achieve. And then it's maybe partly our job to work out how we can put things in place to ensure the data and intelligence you need to deliver that can be provided for you. And I think it is partly about, let's understand what the outcomes we want to get to is, and then let's try and use that by working with yourselves and the sector and automotive and working in government and thinking about policy and funding to try and get you the data and technology and intelligence you need to be able to do that.
And where does the Connected Vehicle Services framework come into actually doing that?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, Paul. By doing exactly that, the framework doesn't say what type of XML schema do you want us to write for the next generation of vehicle travel time data. It doesn't say that at all. What it says is, in simple narrative terms, let's work out some of the things we would like to be able to do with data in the future, and let's list them as a framework. Let's list the things that we want to achieve. And let's not worry at the moment whether that's something we can do now or later, or whether that's something that is currently completely impossible. Because as we've heard, with the change with the development of digital twins and communication and the coming of quantum and a whole range of other things. There are things that now may look very, very difficult, which in the future, maybe in the near future, will be very soluble. So the point of the framework is to try to not think about technology, but think about the outcomes as network operators and transport users we actually want to achieve. That gives us all then something in our various ways as either policymakers or developers or whatever. It gives us something to aim at in terms of the things that we should be aspiring to do with data in whatever form it comes in the future.
And one of the issues that came up in the round table that you and I were on yesterday was the concern about actually procurement and payment. And is there a risk that local authorities in the room are sitting there going, this all sounds absolutely wonderful, but I've got my day job to do, so I haven't got time to go through the process, the red tape that I need to do in order to actually make the most of it because I've just got a pile of deadlines?
Yes. Undoubtedly there is, and there are all kinds of questions about how you buy data and intelligence, which is fundamentally a revenue commitment when actually it's easier to buy things using capital, and there's a whole range of things about how do you run an open procurement when there's probably only one data provider. There's a whole range of questions that we need to answer, and again, I think that's a job for the whole sector to think about. And I don't think, by any stretch, the current 3 quotes, cheapest wins, 60-40 quality price, those kind of models that we have, I don't think they're at all the right models for doing what we need to do. But there are lots of things in the Procurement Act that aren't that. There are lots of other ways set out in the Procurement Act that we can work together to do that. And we can work with Crown Commercial Service, we can work with the government's procurement bodies, we can work through the guidance we generate to be able to map some of that out. And actually, there are lots of innovative ways in which you can do things. It's very tricky, and as a former local authority officer, I know this, it's very tricky to get fast and loose with procurement. Actually, none of us have enough time to do that. Maybe that's a role for government and TTF, is to start to set out some of those alternative routes that will work to procure new services and data in new ways that are legal and doable. Maybe not that well used. Maybe your procurement colleagues will flinch when you first talk about them. But we should be able to provide guidance to allow you to use the Procurement Act to its full to do some of this stuff in new and innovative ways.
Yeah, just like the term fast and loose with procurement there. I've just had to see what procurement colleagues think of that.
That's not government policy, by the way.
I just think it's worth knowing that we're focusing on connected vehicles, but that narrative feeds feeds investment, feeds network use, how fast your network's wearing out, which bits are going to get used the most, where your interventions with the capital we just talked about will make the most difference. All that data and that journey time data, that feeds that narrative as well. So that's part of the justification for spending in that area, because it feeds other investment areas, and you can't get money off the government without data. You can't say, well, it's a great idea, can I have some money? You've got to put some narrative to it, some clarity to it. And all this data and all this consideration of your network feeds other areas that we've got in our day job as well.
And I mean, just in my eye line, so every time I look up, I'm being stared at by Dominic Paolo from INRIX, who we talked, it came up in conversation you mentioned earlier, Darren, about Rotherham. And we did the before and after thing. I just was, as a journalist, asking Dominic, can you do this? And he said, well, yeah, I'll give you a demonstration. What would you like? And I went, all right, then, well, why don't you do Rotherham? Because I've just written an article about Rotherham. And so he did the before and after and was able to look at how much better the traffic flow is through the corridor, thanks to the traffic signals obsolescence grant. So that's a way that possibly, forget the whistles and bells of us being able to give all this amazing information to travellers who really probably care more about their wallpaper or how strong their tea was in the morning than their travel choices. They just want to have it happen. Actually, the connected vehicle data, there is an absolute goldmine of data that you can use to build your business cases.
Yes, again, what can I say? Yeah, there is. And that's something we need to think about. And I think there's a danger with connected data and connected services that you think, oh, this is about doing great new things that we've never done before. And often it's not. It's about finding new ways of doing things we already do more effectively, more quickly, with less resource or whatever. And often it's about that. And yeah, maybe how we use data to justify future investment is one of the things that connected data could do. But for me, that's the kind of process thing. That's using data to help with the process. What we should be doing is thinking about ways in which connected data can provide services to road users better. And to go back to the analogy about people care less about the travel and the strength of their T, so they should. Travel should be kind of frictionless. Travel should happen easily. You shouldn't, travel from home to the office shouldn't be, a life-changing experience. It should happen very simply and in a very kind of, as I say, frictionless way. Whether that's about making the right choice or payment or whatever, or understanding bus timetables or whatever it is, those are the kind of things that connectivity should do better. And I just want to make one point, going back to something we were talking about earlier. We do talk a lot about vehicles. And we talk a lot about vehicles because we kind of always have, and we've talked about CAV, connected and autonomous vehicles, and we had a body in government, it's called CCAV, the Centre for Connected and Autonomous Vehicles. We've always talked about vehicles, but it isn't. It's about agents. It's about all of us as travellers, whether we are in a vehicle or on a bus or walking or cycling. It's about how we give data to individual agents, but agent is a bit jargonistic. It's a bit of an odd term, really, and we need to find a slightly better term. But we do need to think about this. It's how the individual agents, the individual travellers, use data to make journeys better, more quickly, more safe. Whatever our outcomes are, it's about the individual agent, not the vehicle they choose to travel in.
Call them people.
Sorry?
Connected and autonomous people.
There you go.
I don't think that sounds a bit sinister. I mean, we are autonomous people. Well, I think we're all autonomous. I don't know if anyone's controlling us all, but we are fairly autonomous. But yeah, we need to term that A isn't vehicle and B isn't quite as sinister as connected autonomous people. I think, yeah.
Now, it's interesting here because actually when you look at the things that we've discussed, we've got the ability to use all this data to look at, for example, potential accident hotspots that therefore, crash hotspots, we shouldn't use the word accident, crash hotspots that we can use the data to inform ourselves to have a better reason for intervening. We've got the live data that helps control rooms manage their network. We've got the live data that helps people move around whatever mode they're using. And we've got the data that allows us to do the pounds, shillings and pence in the background to actually justify things. All this is going on and it's fantastic. Now, Paul earlier turned to the supply chain and said, come and help me. If you can fix this problem, I want to talk to you. You don't often hear, and I've noted it down over there, I haven't got it with me. You don't often hear somebody say, I want to buy this, I want to spend money, come to me with this solution and I will buy it. So what is your message to the supply chain, all of you, in how you can work with the clever people that are doing all these amazing things in order to create the solutions for everybody?
So I think maybe going back to the procurement discussion a moment or two ago, any successful procurement starts with an amazing specification. But if we don't quite know how to write that specification, we don't know whether we're going to have a successful outcome. So for me, it's for suppliers to support others that haven't dipped the toe in the water yet with true use cases, true examples, case studies, trialing, testing, and explaining to us why their product is going to solve the problem that we're looking to solve. In my case, looking at early intervention, tell me how I'm going to get to that position. Talk honestly with us and help us write that amazing specification that results in the outcome.
I agree with all of that, but first off, you've got to give us some space because we've got to work out what it is we need to address. We've got to find out what our priorities are. And I think I know what users they are, but I need to find out, do I want to help someone on their transfer chain? Do I want to solve a pothole problem? There are a range of issues we face. There's a safety case. Which one do we prioritise? Because we haven't got an endless pit of money. So we've got to give us a little bit of space to work out what our priorities are and what our needs are, and then talk to us.
I would say just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep pressing on, keep innovating. Events like this are great. Keep the dialogue going. Keep speaking to local authorities, because every conversation you have, either over there or individually, it isn't lost. You might think, I haven't got a commission off it, I haven't got a sale off it, but what it does is puts your products and your services in the mind of the local authority, and then a month later, 6 months later, or 8 months later, when you've got a particular problem, then you're aware of it, and if you don't know about it, you can't consider it. So it's just that engagement with the sector and that two-way dialogue that needs to keep coming. So, and take on board the feedback you get from LAs. I know what all of you do. It'll just help you hone your services and your product. You'll get a bigger client base, so we'll get their product we exactly want. So I think it's a two-way thing.
I think there are lots of things we've said over the years about procurement around writing good specifications and understanding the market and all those types of things that there's no need to repeat. I think particularly now, I think it's about impressing on suppliers our desire for the use of open standards and interoperability. And I think a lot of what we're talking about today is stuff that can already be done, and there are already systems you can buy, Ways and others that deliver a lot of the things we want to think about in terms of connected services. What we want to do in the future is ensure that they are more open, so that the marketplace can be larger and people can use whatever end device or end service they want and still consume the same data. And I know to some suppliers that might feel like, a little bit like surrendering something in that you are giving away, you're kind of exposing data for others to use. But I think in the long term, what that ultimately ends up with is a larger market, because it allows people to access data in different ways. It kind of gets away from this problem of, years ago we would all have listened to Radio 2 because that's where the traffic news was, and we would all have had a Collins Road Atlas because that's how we. And the reason that people now still pile into the end of a queue is because the world is very fragmented and we all use different technology, and a lot of us go, technology, it's all too complex, I'm not going to use any technology, I can't be bothered. And actually we need to get to a new situation where people have a comfortable way of all consuming the same data that works for them, irrespective of what's happening underneath. Interoperable services that can use lots of different data from lots of different suppliers. And that feels like a bigger market than the market we have now, but that will be achieved not by us as government asking you all to become charities and give all your IP away. We're absolutely not saying that, but by using thinking about interoperability, using standard interfaces to allow that environment to grow and allow people to access the things that you do in more open ways, while still allowing you to go off and make profits where you need to make profits. And for me, that's the key.
Okay, Darren, we've got the most amazing set of demonstrations here tomorrow. This is why this year it's called TTF Live, where we can see stuff that is here and now and isn't just, as you always talk about, your favourite nuclear-powered space hoppers somewhere in the distance. This is here and now stuff. People are going to see this. The concern is that you're going to have a couple of days getting really pumped up with really great excitement. Then you're going to go back to your desk and you're going to start doing your job again, and the day job is going to take over. So how can TTF support authorities that want to deliver and want to actually use this fantastic new technology that's been produced? And what's the next step to keep it top of people's list?
Well, I think the TTF can help by you continuing to be involved in the TTF, because it will continue to be the means by which government has that conversation and talks about what we're doing. Is there anything you can access on the TTF website next Monday morning that will change the world? Absolutely not. But there will be a lot happening over the next 12 months in government around the development of this and around turning this into something that does make a difference, and potentially maybe funding pilots and trials and other things. This probably may well come along in the next few months. So for the moment, my message is keep involved in the TTF, keep coming to the events, keep looking at the website, sign up for newsletters, sign up for Highways News, because this is going to move, and there's an opportunity to be involved, and this is the way that you will find out about it. But I think the coming year will be one where there will be lots of opportunity for engagement. And I think hopefully this time next year, when we're sat on this stage again, we will be talking about the fact we've started to implement pilots in some form or other of how we will deliver connected services. So for now, is there an immediate quick fix? Nope. Are we at the start of a journey that will get us to a point where we all can use data more and deliver services? I absolutely hope so. And I think that goes back to the conversation this morning about the Manual for Smart Streets, which will start to evolve into that single resource for guidance and standards and advice in how you envisage, map, procure and deliver digital services in the future.
And we're showing off tomorrow the art of the possible, the art of the actual, to really ignite, hopefully, some excitement in the industry about realising that this isn't something in the distance, it's here and now. I think TTF Live 2027 will be a very exciting event to be at. And of course, we've then got the world coming to the UK. So let's actually have some really great stuff to show off to the world when they come to the ITS World Congress at the end of October next year at the NEC, which I hope is in everybody's diaries, because if you're not in the ITS World Congress, I promise you really will be missing out. For now, we've got, because we were one presentation shorter, longer for tea, cakes and talking to the exhibitors. So we will end this session slightly early. I will finish by simply thanking Carl and Paul and Ian coming in at the last minute. So thank you very much to him. And to Darren for, again, coming up onto the stage for the umpteenth time today. Bless him, he gets dragged up all the time. So a big round of applause for our panel. Thank you.